some of the work that AI is doing for us is not that it's just touching more, making our work more efficient to get across a wider scale, but it still feels personal. Like when our fans are getting a note or something, a response back, it's something that doesn't feel like it's, generated by a computer program. And that's an important part of our business.
Welcome. This is AI First with Adam and Andy, the show that takes you to the front lines of AI innovation in business. I'm Andy Sack, and alongside my co-host, Adam Brotman, each episode, we bring you candid conversations with business leaders transforming their business with AI. No fluff, straight talk, real use cases, and insights for you. Welcome, Hugh Weber, our guest on episode 2, and Adam, my co-host. Glad to have you guys here.
Hey, Hugh. Good to see you, Adam and Andy.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Thought we'd kick right off. Hugh, why don't you introduce yourself first and tell us a little bit about your business?
So I am leading the Seattle Sounders in the Major League Soccer, North American Soccer League. Have been in sports for almost 30 years, running NBA, NHL, English Premier League teams, esports, so a wide variety of sports and entertainment, along with venues and other types of live experiences. Been in Seattle for about 2 years. And we are in a moment of growth, both in the league for soccer in North America with the World Cup coming in 2026, but also for the franchise itself, which has been around since 2000. Actually, it started in '74, but in the MLS since 2009, and has been one of the more successful franchises for this league. But we're trying to figure out how to make it more global.
And Hugh, did you move to Seattle for this role?
So I grew up just outside of Seattle, a place called Tacoma, and left about 35 years ago and got into sports and lived in everywhere from LA to North Carolina to New Orleans, and most recently spent the last 10 years of my career in New York running which became Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, which was a conglomerate of sports teams across multiple leagues.
And can you tell us a little bit about the size and scope? I mean, I guess it's now Sounders and Reign.
Yeah, so I think the appetite by the investors of the Sounders was it's a trend within our industry to understand how you can take this magnetic appeal we have with hundreds of thousands of fans and typically any region, and leverage that into other opportunities of growth, whether it's in real estate, whether it's data, insights, live experiences. And so about 2 years ago when I came, there was this vision of how we might take the operating system, which is the Sounders, running a men's soccer club, and leverage it into other enterprise properties. And the women's NWSL team, which is the premier league in the world for women, long-standing franchise in Seattle called the Reign. We brought that into the fold just in June of this year. So the team is now scaling. Part of what we'll talk about today is how the tool of AI is helping us actually double the outputs of what we're doing and not having to double the actual resource of humans that we're putting toward it.
Yeah, so let's get into your perspective on AI and sort of what you've done from a digital transformation perspective. And Adam, feel free to chime in at any point here as well.
Yeah, I would say, again, I'm at the tail end of my career. Like, I'm in my late 50s. I've been doing sports, and sports and entertainment has generally been a very traditional old school business, paper tickets and, Excel spreadsheets in terms of tracking your customers. It's been an industry that's been resistant to change. But as we looked at kind of what the wave of reading about how AI was coming and potentially as a tool to help organizations be more efficient, we generally have a culture of curiosity, and so I believe it's an important attribute for teams that are high performing is to always be curious in terms of what's happening in the industry and the environment and how we might apply it to our work. And so the managing partner, Adrian Hanauer, and I started this journey of doing research and understanding what AI actually was. And that's how, the three of us met. And so I think in some regard, I look back and I think, gosh, it's only been 10 months since we've really kind of put our toe in the water and then started running toward the capability. But it happens so fast, and this industry is changing so fast. It kind of feels like you've been doing it for a long time. And so I would say we have varying degrees of success of integration in terms of how teams within the Sounders are utilizing the tool. But I think collectively there is this, okay, this is a new platform that we are going to integrate across every aspect. We're just trying to figure out how to onboard every department so that they're utilizing the tool and the resource effectively.
What, from your perspective, I mean, so you started 10 months ago. Talk to us about your AI journey and highlight sort of the most significant success.
Well, again, I think for anybody who's doing a little bit of dabbling, it starts off with the novelty of it. Everyone, you're doing these, and I think Andy and Adam, you guys came in and helped us with a boot camp that really kind of reframed how people were thinking about the tool. But we did it through fun, right? We made it fun for people. And so the exercise that we did with every one of our staff was to create an exercise where everybody had to come up with a new franchise name, a logo, and it was a lot of fun. But it actually took the fear out of what people had heard about AI as a job replacer, as something that was going to consolidate the workforce. And it got people thinking about it differently. I'd say early on, the novelty and, I think part of the reason that we have these breakthrough moments where you're thinking about, oh shit, I didn't know it could do that, is because we're thinking about it the wrong way. Like it's a search engine and it's like, well, it's better than the other search engines I do, as opposed to thinking of it, which is something you guys helped us with. Think of it as a really smart person who can actually help you as an assistant, collate and put ideas and organize your thoughts better. And so, kind of the aha moments early on were because my expectations were so low, right? They were like, I was just going to get some sort of like web browser page and it'd be interesting, but not really all that helpful. And I think what we found is the more our expectations were raising with what it could do, the more it made the experts in our field more expert, for lack of a better term. It just made us better because there were often things we weren't thinking about. And so we're seeing teams now adopt at different rates, which is okay. We're letting people go at their own pace. We're tracking adoption. We have a council that's providing some guardrails around what we should and shouldn't be doing and how we could and should not be operating. But again, it's something where I think that we're just trying to keep the band of experience in a tight band so that we don't have people falling too far behind and we don't have people getting too far ahead.
I remember when we worked with you at the beginning and you guys did kind of have your aha moments and we've been a little bit along the journey with you, but now that you've gotten to be as far along as you are, and I'm sure you'd describe it as you're in the first inning still, but you've had several months to sort of see it start to set in with the organization. How would you describe right now is where you're seeing the unlocks and the ROI from it? Would you say it's a combination of better decisions or the ability to do something you weren't able to do? Or is it more of a productivity boost, doing what you were doing, but sort of doing more of it faster and whatnot? So can you kind of give us a sense of, or is it a balance?
I think it's those two plus one other, which I'll get into. Our fiscal year is a January to December. And so we introduced this midway. So that wasn't like we had plans in terms of how we were going to do this a long time out. We basically exposed the opportunity, grabbed it, jumped in, and kind of adapted along the way. So what ended up happening is, yes, there were some kind of mundane exercise work that we do, things like writing game notes and press releases and things like that, that we quickly learned that instead of taking 4 hours after a match to do that, you could literally get it done in 20 minutes because the first draft would get done. We would, and then you could just kind of iterate it a bit. So there was definitely some efficiencies around productivity and how I'm not sure we have yet how to figure out how to translate that extra 3 hours into something that is additive, right? So it's like, wow, good for you. It saved 3 hours of your time. Now, what are you going to use that 3 hours to go do instead, right? And I think that's the evolution that we're, again, still working through on the productivity side. Um, on the side of like the third element I was going to talk about is like now that we're into budget and planning, you can start to think about where you're reallocating resources, right? So where have we had humans working and doing heavy lifting on things that candidly AI has just, again, consolidated, made more efficient. And now where are we going to go reallocate those people and how are we going to do it? That's the kind of messy middle we're in right now. And thinking about, because we always go through this exercise, most companies do, beginning of the new fiscal, you want to have your headcount budgets, you want to have, your new initiatives and what are they? And our default now is, okay, how can we go achieve that? And how is our first stop AI? How can this be the first step of what we do as opposed to let's go hire an engineer and see what they come in and what they propose. And so I think that is the behavioral change that we're seeing internally. And I think the real impact, we haven't got a finalized budget for 25 yet, but my intuition is that you're going to see a lot more work around strategy and thinking as opposed to some of these mundane things that we've done in the past.
In your process, what would you, for other leaders that have not gone through what you've just gone through, what would you say, that not that you would do differently versus what you would do the same, but just what were sort of the areas that, it was where it was harder to implement or to get people to try or to think about, or versus where it was easier to do? Like, I mean, but I'm not just trying to pick on the negatives, but also the positive. Like, kind of what advice would you give to someone who's going through this as a leader for the first time?
Yeah, I think we think about, I guess the way I would put it is that I walk to work every day. It's 2 miles. It takes me 30 minutes. And then one day a bicycle shows up in my driveway and I'm like, huh, should I walk or should I take the bike? You don't do both, right? You don't have to do both, but it's really super efficient for me to take the bike and it makes my life a lot easier. So why not use it? And so I think there is habits that you have to, again, they're ingrained. Where you walk out your driveway and you're halfway down the block and you go, oh crap, I forgot about I have that bike sitting back there. I should probably go back and jump on it.
Right.
And that is the part that you just have to retrain yourself and not think of it as like, again, you're not making 2 trips to work, you're only making 1 trip to work. So you don't have an AI way of doing it and then another way of doing it. And I'd say that
Right.
was the kind of the paradigm breakthrough for us that made sense.
I'm still trying to understand your perspective on sort of like the most promising use case. Like it sounds like productivity, like you've saved some time on some automated tasks, but like, is there anything where you're like, oh, like this, I see the green shoots of promise right here. And maybe it was the budgeting thing as you're looking ahead, but I'm
Yeah,
looking for the thing that
there's so many, Andy. It's like,
there are.
even, yeah. So for us, you know, uh, it's funny because we're in the live events business. You think about soccer as being, we're in the sporting business and we're going to win cups and all that stuff. But like our job is hosting 32,000 people,
To a party.
2
Yeah.
times a year for a party and to have fun.
Yeah.
And in that, cohesive experience, there's always breakdowns. How long were the lines in the bathroom and how long were the lines in reaching out to people, and that service and that engagement of our fans that come to these matches is so important. So if I can take all that data and find trends quickly and get back to Andy and or the group he was with and find solutions so that it's not taking me a month and a half to change that line at the hot dog stand, but it's taking me one match and it's changed. Those are the types of things we're feeding that information in and saying, what would you do differently? How would you do it? And it's actually coming up with suggestions as opposed to having somebody collate reams and reams and reams of information, because we have lots of information. We know everybody who comes to our building, but we don't know necessarily, again, how we're making decisions quickly that are going to have the greatest effect on that experience.
What's been the greatest challenge in doing the sort of rolling out and talk about sort of the size of the organization and what you've done as part of that context?
Yeah, so we have about 210 people, call it, so we're a relatively small organization. I'd say there are a lot of different types of work that's done. If you're the head coach and you're down training, it's a very different job than if you're running ticket sales. They're just very different. And so having use cases and or finding how to integrate that use and build it into people's normal practice, has been very, very different. So think of it as, if I had 1,000 engineers, I would just hand it to them and say, you all kind of do similar work, but all of our folks do very different types of work. So we have found that connecting the dot between what the capabilities are and what the challenges are that particular person has, and even the coach has now seen some of the things that it's capable of doing. And so that has been the scaling challenge. I'd say the other thing, just more universally, is like the fact that we're still in the first inning, the fact that we're in this like really nascent, we just haven't actually pushed it to its limits yet. We just haven't, right? And so it's back to that adage: I don't know what I don't know, and so
Yeah.
it's this iterating, testing, iterating, testing, iterating, testing that we're in the middle of right now.
Hugh, do you think AI is underhyped or overhyped in terms of the impact on business?
I think it's, this is an anecdotal answer. I mean, I can only go off of my experience, but I talk to other leaders, definitely in our industry and sport, it's not even on their radar yet. So I would say it's underhyped. I think that I think the world that we'll be working in, I think the transformational change within sports and entertainment usually takes about a decade and a half. I think this is going to be 2 years. It's going to be radically different in terms of how, because there's so much that we do in this industry that is just the same way it's been done since 1965, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the piece. I will say one of the other challenges that now I think about is we are um, reliant on a lot of our industry partners, ticketing systems, the people who cater the food in the stadium, like, and again, it's sometimes we're pulling our partners along in this space. And I think if I had a magic wand, I would just say, hey, we're all going to do this. And this is how it's going to work, and I'm going to make sure it happens this way. And and sometimes is the challenge.
One of the things that comes up a lot in conversations with Andy and I and other people that are like living in this industry every day around AI transformation is, even if the AI systems didn't get any better from here, like just pretend they were frozen in time, which is very far from the path it's been on and probably is going to continue on. But even if it didn't get any better, it's already sort of this amazing thing, right? Like you just said, Hugh, like you realize like, wow, it's like effectively free knowledge workers, and they don't get tired and don't have bias and don't get frustrated and have potentially ultimate and work 24 hours a day and all that kind of stuff. So it can do all these things. And so I want to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. If and you can tell me that you don't want to answer, that's okay. Which is like if if you were to try to quantify, and I don't mean in dollars, right? I'm
Right.
talking about rough orders of magnitude. If you were to say, if next year you're doing your planning right now, you and Adrian and the team are sitting around and you're saying, all right, it's our goal that, everybody even takes the current use of Gen AI up to another level in terms of how they're using it every day. They're getting that bicycle habit that you mentioned better. So let's say you got everybody to a place magically next year to where you wanted them to be using it, and supplementing what they're doing and complementing what they're doing. How would you quantify as a percentage of productivity lift overall that across the board? And I'm talking about quality, quantity. Coach is using it to make better pre-game, post-game, in-game decisions. Your ticket salespeople are doing better with it. Like everybody's
Yeah.
getting whatever uplift. What percentage of uplift? I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you
No,
think?
I would be disappointed if it wasn't 2 to 3x.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I think
So
it's a multiplier. I don't think it's a percentage increase. Like if our business is growing, when I say business, if our
yeah.
sponsorship business or our ticket business is growing at 5%, we got to get it to 15. Like it's that kind of function.
Right.
And again, and again, it was a shift. I think when Adrian and I started this journey, it was like, oh, we spent X number of dollars on ticket sales. What if we spent a fraction of that? And I think we reversed our thinking, and it's not about saving, it's about scope and scale and how we can actually double the size of our fan base and get more people engaged and feeling so much of what we do with our brand and our team is that personal connection, right? If you think about those memories you've had of going to games or matches or whatever it is, it's like that personal thing you have. And so some of the work that AI is doing for us is not that it's just touching more, making our work more efficient to get across a wider scale, but it still feels personal. Like when our fans are getting a note or something, a response back, it's something that doesn't feel like it's generated by a computer program. And that's an
Adam,
important
do
part of
you,
our business.
Adam, are you surprised by his answer of
Yeah.
two to
Yeah.
three
But I'm
x?
pleasantly surprised that I was, right? I was thinking you were going to say 25% or 45% or like, but it's interesting,
He
Andy.
said 200 to 300%.
Yeah.
Just
And
to,
that's, by the way, Hugh, I think you know this, like one of our case studies that we are proud to have done in our book was with Moderna. And they say we have 5,000 people doing the work of tens of thousands of people. So they're talking about, like you just said, they're talking about 2, 3, 4x uplifts of capability sets. So it's interesting to hear you say that.
But it's funny
Hugh,
because it is again. I'm a huge believer that the source of kind of the magic sauce of organizations and their ability to kind of perform at a high level is cultural, right? And so a lot of this, we took a very cultural kind of view, and it's been for some a challenge. Like as you know, like there are
yeah,
humans that are just more resistant to change. And as we are recruiting people now, it's really interesting in an industry that is not talking about AI a lot. And even those teams that are talking about using AI, they are talking about doing a workshop. They're not talking about like integrate it in your operation. And so recruiting people in who have kind of a default to this has been you have to hire the right kind of people too, right?
yeah.
That are again curious and are interested in taking a journey on this path.
I mean, one of the things that stood out to me, Hugh, I mean, we've been working together since the beginning of the year. So the Sounders is a client of Forum 3. And so thank you for your being a client, and also thank you for being on the podcast. One of the things that stood out to me as part of your cultural rollout and AI first digital transformation is you've really focused on the people side. So, like specifically investment in careers, investment in skill sets for your people, no layoffs. And more notably, even more recently, is that as you look forward, it started to become part of the review process and the recruiting process. And I think that approach, I mean, that also, we saw that at Moderna as well. And so, I compliment you on that, but it stands out as a unique approach.
Well, I think the adoption tactics are out there, right? You've heard like Moderna was like basically you use it or you get fired or whatever it was. We've heard all these case studies of how CEOs have kind of like put a tactic out there to make it happen. Having this be something that people gravitate to again because we want a culture where people are continually curious and questioning how we're doing things and getting better and reinventing and re-engineering as we can. And this just fit perfectly into that. It was almost like a excuse to have a laboratory where you have something that you're going to question everything you're doing. And so in that regard, it was important for us to leverage it that way.
Hugh, what did you actually find to be the best tactics, looking back, that like helped the team get comfortable with it? Or did it just happen? Was it more about leadership, put the right stuff in place and just give it some time to organically happen? Or were there some things that you found in hindsight that were like helpful to get the company to be more eager to experiment with it and to adopt it?
Yeah, Adam, I think there's stages. I think there was an onboarding stage that required something that was what we did, which was this kind of day-long fun, people laughing, demystifying it,
Right.
kind of like, wow, that was pretty cool. And even in that kind of subset of humans, you had people who had used it pretty a lot and they were coaching others. And it was a cool environment. But that's the way it needed to be onboarded. But that's not how it grew internally, right? Then you start to get a council and super users who are now tagging with teams of people, and now you start, instead of taking it from a theoretical exercise to a practical, tell me your 4 biggest challenges and let's figure out how AI might be able to help us solve it. That to
Totally.
me is where it got sticky.
Yeah.
Hugh, I'm curious. You have, we don't, we're not in regular content. Do you have any questions for Adam and I about that would be helpful to you?
Well, I think
That
like
you,
10 months ago, you guys predicted that, the next version's coming November-ish. I think we're in that time and it's coming again, and it's not, 5% better, 20% better. It's again 5x better. Is it playing out the way that you guys thought that it would be now? Again, because I think the life cycle of this stuff is not going to be measured in years; it's gonna be measured in months. And so I'm
yeah.
curious is if you've seen what you predicted.
Hugh, it's funny that you asked that because yes and no, but I'm not trying to be coy or punt. It's actually a question that on everyone's mind right now because the new models came out from Claude and Anthropic's Claude and OpenAI's ChatGPT with their O1 model. Both of those new models came out recently, and they were pretty amazing. I've heard everything from it's gone from, call it college level intelligence to graduate or even PhD level intelligence. The ability for coding capabilities has gotten better. But that wasn't what we were talking to your question. We were talking about, we were all expecting this GPT-5, let's call it, that
Right.
is going to be, and everybody's been waiting for that. And then this morning, there was an article that came out of Bloomberg that said that there's rumors that these models they're having trouble getting them to reach that same level of scaling laws of improvement. And there's a lot of kerfuffle in the industry today about, is that true? Is that not true? And so my short answer is, I don't think we know. This is just Adam speaking, and maybe I'm biased, but I actually think we're going to be shocked at what comes out in the next month or two. I actually think that the rumors that they're running into problems are not true, and that they might at some point, but I don't think we're there yet. That's my prediction, but I don't know because there's a debate about it, and we'll see. I don't know, Andy, what would you say?
I would say I would say the pace of technological advance, I continue to believe that AI is underhyped and misunderstood and underutilized by business, society, and individuals across the board. So I think I continue to be amazed at its capability set and the
Right.
speed with which it's moving.
Yeah. In fact, it's worth saying, Hugh, and you set it up really nicely for us on this episode, which is, even if it didn't improve from here,
Yep.
this debate, okay, so we're at somewhere between a graduate student and a PhD level of intelligence with all of the knowledge of the internet. And here come autonomous agents and multimodal capabilities that are mind-blowing with advanced voice mode and video and other things like that. And here you're on this podcast saying, I think if we can get to where we want to get to, we're talking hundreds of percentage points of improvement of productivity and quality that we could potentially achieve as an organization. I don't, I don't know how much, that's so amazing, right? I was that, right. And 95% of businesses aren't taking advantage of it, to Andy's point and your point. So I kind of look at it and go, I don't know how much better it needs to get for it to be this absolutely
Yeah.
disruptive force.
That was going to be my follow-up question, which is really more about what and how would you define getting better? Is it like the first answer back is just better and you don't have to iterate it and probe it a little bit more when it's being lazy and that those types of bugs are getting worked out? Or is it the fact that it's actually thinking on even a third or fourth level that it's not thinking now? So I'm curious where you see the
I mean,
opportunity for.
it's again, not to hog the conversation. I'd say it's a fantastic question because the pace of change has been so mind blowing that, and the scaling laws have applied to where when you listen to Elon Musk and Dario Amodei from Anthropic and Sam Altman from OpenAI, when you listen to the three of them, they're all trying to achieve effectively this concept of they don't call it this, but it's effectively this concept of super, where that's out of the movies and stuff, where it's like, it can just do all these things and it blows your mind. I actually think in reality, they're working on that. They believe that's still going to come in the next couple of years. I actually think the more interesting thing to answer your question is more about how the systems are going to be able to autonomously do things for you, which is this agentic thing people are talking about, where you're just going to go and actually be able to say, hey, I want you to go and achieve these things for me as an organization, and it goes off and it does it and it comes back, which it's not able to do yet, right? So it doesn't need to have more intelligence yet. I think at that point, that's more of a systemic capability that they're going to work on. So I feel like it's going to get smarter, yes, but I think the next thing is less about it giving you like this super intelligent answer and more about its capability set being more robust and automated so that you can get even a bigger lift than you get today. Because, we don't, like, for example, Apple hasn't released really, I mean, I guess it did some lightweight version of it, but they haven't really done the full weight of what Apple Intelligence is going to do until next year. And I think when you start to have the ability to just go, hey, Siri, I want you to do this and that for me. Now Siri's going to respond to me until it's on my desk. But that, that is exactly where, we're at right now. I think in terms of the next stage, I think it's more, I don't know, Andy, if you'd answer it differently. I think it's more of like the systemic capabilities.
I mean, I think agents, I think memory is going to be, context memory. Like, let's put it, we're certainly in the first inning of understanding and implementation in business, but like the systems are still kludgy. And that like, there's all these like copy and pasting and integration with other pieces of software. And like the whole software industry is just going to be, the enterprise software industry is going to be completely transformed. So yeah, it's going to get better fast. And I think the fact that you started when you did and that you're embarking on it, I think, we'll look to have you on in a year and have you reflect.
I mean, it's kind of wild to think about, right, Hugh? Like if Coach Schmetzer is like in a year from now, if there's gonna have to be rules in the MLS banning coaches from having an earpiece in where some advanced AI is watching the game and giving advice during the game, and maybe they're doing that now. Maybe coaches actually doing that now, but like the level of that kind of capability when you get multimodal, right? When you get, it's like, okay, it's not about intelligence. It's about, hey, how do I harness this thing now in a way that's going to be much more, like Andy said, much more seamless into the flow of whatever my people are doing.
Yeah.
I think we're at time. Adam, do you have any parting either question or comment you want to make?
I just want to say, I mean, Hugh, I'm so glad you came on this podcast with us, and you're like a terrific example of a business leader, an organization leader that, went through an AI first process, like from beginning to end. And you're still in the first inning of it, and you're very humble. And your organization, we had the pleasure of working with you guys, and your whole organization is smart and humble and hungry and curious. And so obviously you and Adrian just have made a huge imprint on the culture of the company. And thank you for taking the time to kind of explain your process to us and to our community.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the time. And I look forward to us again, thinking about version 5, 6, 7 of what this looks like for us. Cause I think that to me is the fun, is the learning and stretching the capability that we just haven't even seen yet. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll add and just say, we continue to be fans of the Sounders as well as friends of yours and Adrian's and Lauren's, and we're here for you. So Don't hesitate to reach out as you're going through your 2025 planning. We're happy to offer our 2 cents to the extent that it's helpful.
Yeah. And as Seattle guys, we're allowed to say go Sounders, no offense, but I hope for the rest of the league, but I hope you win it all this year.
Thank you.
Totally.
And go Rains.
With that, everyone, thank you. Thanks for listening to AI First with Adam and Andy. To stay updated on the latest in AI and access exclusive content, visit forum3.com, subscribe to our email list, and follow us on LinkedIn. We truly believe you can't overinvest in AI. Onward, folks. Hey, Adam, that was an outstanding episode, I thought. What'd you think?
I did too. I was particularly struck, thinking about his question to us around, is a big bang going to happen with some new model like GPT-5 or whatever? Because that had been sort of the rumor. In fact, we even put it in our book, like, oh, supposedly there's going to be this GPT-5 by the end of this year that's going to be twice as good, or some it's going to blow us away. And he was asking about that. And I thought that was something maybe we should hover over for a minute and talk about, because that's kind of the topic du jour that in the news
Yeah,
today
I
about,
mean, so that, so
are these scaling laws hitting a wall or whatever?
yeah, I think that is a topic we should cover. I think the other two topics that jumped out for me that we could cover if we have time are just his intuitive sense that there's a 200 to 300% productivity gain, and that his annual planning process. I thought that was a really great moment. And I
Mhm.
really liked his description of using AI as like you walk to work every day and suddenly somebody hands you a bike. So let's cover those in that order if we have time. Let's start with your where you started with basically the pace of acceleration or the pace of innovation as a result of that's coming through the AI tech, and whether it's hitting a wall or not.
Yeah. So that topic is one that everybody's talking about right now, because there's some rumors that the pace of improvement from model to model coming out of these major frontier systems is slowing down or hitting a wall or whatever. I did notice Sam Altman tweeted yesterday or this morning, there is no wall. He loves those. He's kind of good at those cryptic tweets. Here's what I'd say about that. That's interesting. And tell me what you think. If you're, particularly for our listeners, if you're a business person and you're a leader or you're an entrepreneur and you're still trying to figure out how to get the most out of these systems, think about what Hugh said. He believes that in his planning process, he could see, he could double the productivity level of his company or the organization if everyone was using AI all the time, and experimenting with it and using it. That's at today's level, right? So today's system of intelligence and
Yeah,
capabilities.
40/01 for ChatGPT.
That's right. And so the like what's fascinating about this topic is that even if it stopped, because right now the discussions and the debate is, are they going to continue to improve at the same linear rate they've been improving by adding more data and more compute and whatnot? They're not talking about the fact that they're not going to continue to improve. It's a matter of whether it's going to improve at the same rate. But even if they just stop, in terms of their intelligence and knowledge, you're talking about Hugh and Moderna and others that have noticed that if you apply an AI first principles and practices, you're going to see double to triple digit productivity lift overall, which is, as you and I have talked about, is no doubt going to translate into operating profit improvements, like right away, probably double digit. And that's if it stopped. You'd probably go through all of 25, maybe 26, where you'd be getting good at taking advantage of these things. That's number one thing that struck me. That in other words, the question is the wrong. Not that he's asking the wrong question, because he was asking it probably in that spirit, but like it's actually, the question is going to become, what happens if it doesn't improve at the same rate, but what, besides the knowledge and the intelligence of these systems, their capabilities are also going to improve. And that's not what's being talked about enough. And Andy, and maybe I'll turn it over to you to talk, because you've talked about, Eric Schmidt has said there's some stuff coming in the next 12
Yeah.
months that's not even about knowledge or intelligence, right? So why don't you talk about that for a second? And
Yeah, I mean, Eric Schmidt, in his talk at Stanford, which is readily available on YouTube, I've watched now 2.5 times. I think it's a great, and what he talks about is that the three things are going to happen in the next 12 months that are going to catapult and continue to catapult AI into the stratosphere exponentially. That they're that they're game changers for society, let alone business. And those three things he identifies are one, continued increase of memory. Basically, today we're constrained on the models are constrained on memory, and they're going to be unconstrained going forward. Number two, their agentic future, and the third thing is text to action. And it's the combination or the coalescence of those three things, all at basically arriving at approximately the same time over the next, he says, 12 months. That when those things are all available, that AI will be at a totally new level. That's not to mention this continued integration and ease of use of what is already, what at times is a kludgy, like copy and paste and sharing of prompts, et cetera. Like we're still in the very early stages of getting
Well,
these
right.
things to work beyond the individual person and getting them to
Right.
work for teams.
Yeah, that's right. Because you're pointing out that it's so hard to wrap your head around because it's so meta. But like you're pointing out that outside of intelligence and reasoning and knowledge and all those things that people are debating about whether or not they're going to continue to become super intelligent, if you add infinite memory, text to action software development, and agentic capabilities where you can just
Totally.
give it a goal and it does whatever, it just goes off and does stuff. Now imagine you're having a conversation with AI, you're learning something, you're doing something, you're accomplishing something, or you already gave it a goal and it comes back. And then you're saying, oh yeah, would you do me a favor? I want you to like summarize this and send this over to Andy. And because it's agentic, it can tap into my email or it's got its own email because agents are going to have their own email and like, and it's just going to like go do this stuff. And now your level of productivity is going to take a step change up because you've just truly added resources, not just knowledge and capability and planning and the things that it does today. And again, none of that requires the models to be necessarily smarter. They just need to have more memory and abilities. And so, yeah,
Adam,
we're,
could
oh,
just for those the listeners who did, can you summarize what what agentic means and what text to action means?
yeah, you and I were having to look that up, right? So we know agentic. So agentic is when you give, you're going to be able to give the AI system that you work with, whether it be ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of these things, you're going to be able to give the AI system a goal and some context and some access to various systems, including your own potentially. And then it's going to autonomously on its own just go off
And
and
do
get
that
stuff
action for
done.
you. Yep.
Yeah, get stuff done, do things, come back to you, etc. As opposed to right now, it's all about prompt response, prompt
Yep.
response. And then so that's agentic, where it autonomously can go accomplish those things for you. And then on top of that, text to action, which he talks about, apparently is just the ability to effectively use the AI as a programming, as a
I
completely
think, yeah, I
capable
mean, it's interesting
software
where,
development resource, right?
yeah, my understanding of it, and it's the fact that that you and I don't have a full understanding of it is sort of telling, but and I could be wrong, but my understanding of it is in the same way that you go to Midjourney and say, give me an image of a parrot flying over a steepled church on a cloudy day. And it gives you, and give me 5 images, and it gives you 5 images for you to choose from. And then you can go and edit or do whatever the hell you want. In the same way, it's basically text to action is basically text code,
Yeah, like
is
you
my understanding.
describe the app you
Yeah,
want.
build me an application, a mobile application that has these 3 features and can do this
Right.
and has, is behind a paywall, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and we see and so with our clients at Forum 3 with our AI first boot camps and consulting and the workshops we do, we actually hear a lot from the clients, "Oh, I wish I could just say, build me an app that does this." Like you hear that. In fact, a lot of the road mapping, the experimentation, et cetera, that ends up happening once a company becomes AI first is they start to understand themselves what the systems are capable of. And then they sort of roll their own little mini apps, but they're not like full blown apps quite yet because you need developers. And
Yeah.
so that I think what he's saying is you won't need as many developers to be able to sort of take that final mile step of going
Yeah. I
from
mean,
idea to implementation.
I think if you sum those three things together, the memory, the agentic and the text to action, it basically it massively expands all humans in natural language to become pretty good developers and
Yeah, and
creators.
it actually sort of feels a little AGI like, artificial general intelligence like, because when you look at all the levels of AGI by the way that OpenAI describes them, everyone has their definition of AGI, and for those that don't know, AGI, artificial general intelligence, refers to this sort of end state, so to speak, that all these systems are working towards, where the AI system is good or more likely better than all humans at all important tasks and functions. And that sort of this like, and in fact, it's so good that it can do research, it can do scientific discovery, and it certainly can do marketing and accounting and legal and all the and do a lo I mean, so AGI is kind of scary because it's also the question becomes like, what if AGI goes rogue and what does it mean for my
Yeah,
job? And so
I think that's why Eric is going when those three things come out. It may not be AGI, but he's basically going. It's going to be scary as well.
and he's talking about it happening in the next
Twelve
year,
to eight, yeah, 12 to
12 to
18
18
months.
months. Yeah, so you're that's why we always so going back to our interview with
We'll
Hugh
call it
just now.
by the end by 2026, January of 26. We'll say,
Yeah, and
not to
so,
be
like,
exact.
what I thought so going back to the Hugh conversation,
Yeah,
is what's interesting is, he's the Sounders and Rain organization, because of Hugh and Adrian and the whole team's leadership, they are an AI first organization. Like, they've gone through our boot camp, they've done our workshop, they've got a council, they've got they're you
yeah,
can
they're
see
doing it.
experimentation bubbling across all these functions. And now he describes, yeah, it's not perfect. We're still in the first inning, but when I think about next year, I think about, triple digit productivity gains that we can start to see happening. He just mentioned that to us, and he says it'll translate into, growth rates and profits and customer experience improvements. And that's at none of that other stuff being possible. Right.
Yeah,
So, it makes me think about, like, when we talk to our clients about an AGI horizon, process, like, okay, it's good that you're doing all this stuff, but you should be thinking about what happens when the technology is at that 12 to 18 month state. That's what Professor Malik told us in our conclusion chapter of our book. He's like, guys, you need to you need to
yeah,
be
yeah,
telling people that this other capability set's coming, and they need to be planning for it and playing around with thoughts around and experimenting with it now, because which is really weird, right? Because companies are not they're not even getting the most out of the systems to just for
yeah.
today's system.
For those listeners that haven't read the book, at the end of our book, AI First, a playbook for future proofing your business and brand. The end of that, the concluding chapter was an interview we did with Ethan Mollick, the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton professor, who's the leading author, professor, and thought leader in the AI space. And he basically said to us that he really liked our playbook, but that we needed to being pushing beyond the current models and thinking about what's coming next, and really encouraging slash pushing on business leaders to be investing in R&D around how AI can unlock their business in ways that they're not thinking about today. And you and I have been talking really just last week about that notion of, then we asked them, what does it mean to invest in R&D? And I would say the Sounders are at the point, they're still at inning one. They're not yet envisioning really what is capable, what is unlocked in their business because of AI. They're still just trying to get their basic operations automated and increase productivity. So they're on that journey, but you can really see that in listening to Hugh. I took away that there's an opportunity, and Hugh's almost at the point where he's ready to engage us in that conversation, because it's an exciting conversation to have. And
Yeah.
it's not just a conversation, it's actually an investment, a series of processes to choose an area of customer experience um, that previously was not feasible, but now because of AI is feasible, and
Yeah,
where to make those investments.
yeah.
We have a few minutes. Let's spend a few moments about his annual planning, because when we talked about it just as the interview with Hugh was ending, I actually agreed with you. I think that the fact that he said that he intuitively is going into the 2025 year-end planning and now is thinking about increased productivity of at least 2x, maybe 3x, which is in sync with what we heard from other clients and customers.
Right.
it- it's a pretty incredible thing to think about annual planning and the transformation that comes from that AI unlock.
Yeah. It made me think about how for everyone who's been through annual planning, particularly at the corporate level, there's always the usual before in the age before ChatGPT and Gen AI, it would it and still today, I'm sure, and everyone's doing it right now. It's November. It's like it's always this, years you put a budget together and everybody submits their budget. It gets rolled up to the CFO or something, and then
Yep.
they come back with like cuts, like, well, and so
This
everyone
is what we
asks for more than they really need, and because they know that the drills are going to get cut back, and then, and the CFO or they're playing the same game back to the people, and then you end up at some sort of budget, bottoms up budget. What's going to be really interesting when he was talking, I was thinking like, we're not there yet, but I bet you we're getting close to the era of CFOs are going to go, hey, with Gen A, we're an AI first company. Like, you should be able to do the same amount of work with, either less resources, or you don't need to be asking for all these other things. You should be getting, the same people should be able to do 50% more, and there's going to be this sort of good cop, bad cop that's going to start to happen with AI systems, right? Where it's like, I don't get it. We invest, we have with AI capability. So that era, it's actually we're not there yet by any stretch, but 95% of companies are not even AI first yet. So it's like they're not that conversation's not happening. But I bet it
Yeah,
is in a year or two.
I mean, it's actually an interesting thing because I thought it was a great thing because on one hand, he's talking about a 2x, 3x productivity gain, and suddenly there's a lot more capability, a lot of, sort of more menial automatable tasks are taken away from the staff and given to the AI. That's all goodness. The employees are happier, et cetera. And so suddenly there's more to do. And he talked about it because they had also had recently acquired or merged with the Rain, the female soccer's team. So that's awesome. And on the other side of that, this gets at sort of this whole tension that C-suites feel around ROI as they're moving down the AI digital transformation path. And on one hand, there's a desire to do a proof of concept where you can have a clear ROI to prove that AI is worth it. When in my mind, it's like, oh my goodness, like you're paying $20 a month for these employees to have this incredible intelligence and unlimited capability set. Like, why are you spending time thinking about ROI? That's the wrong thing to focus on. What's your thoughts on ROI or not, and what's your practical advice to business leaders on that, the ROI as it relates to AI topic?
Yeah.
And
It's
I
funny.
suspect this will come out in our pod in numerous interviews, but let's put a stake in the ground on that.
I mean, I would say two things. One is, as we mentioned in our book, and this will come up in future podcasts, when we interviewed Moderna, I loved what Bryce Chalamel from Moderna said, where he said, if you're using AI, if you're properly and you're fully an AI first company and you're integrating it into everything you do, it becomes an essential utility. And therefore, like, like,
Like electricity.
like electricity, internet, and computers. And it's like asking about the ROI on those
Yeah.
would just be,
What's the ROI on electricity?
yeah, it'd be like, well, wait a minute. First of all, and the funny thing about ROI, that term, just a pet peeve of mine, it literally means return on investment. So your actual investment in electricity is not that high. So your ROI is crazy high, right? Like now, when people
And
mean
that
when they
may
mean
be, I think his implication is that may also be true of AI.
that's right. But it's funny because when people say, what's the ROI? What they really mean is like, I've got a lot, what's the ROI of me taking my mind space up and actually trying to get my company to stop what they're doing? They're busy, they're distracted, they're stressed, and to focus on this supposed wonderful new utility that's going to like improve whatever, improve my profits, improve my productivity, improve my customer experience. Like, is that really there? Is the there? Is what needle is it going to move? That's what they're really asking, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think you and I. So, all kidding aside, I think that what we would say is, after doing this for multiple decades, digital transformation, operations, consulting, marketing, all the above, like every once in a while, only once before in our lifetime, which is like I'm kind of blurring kind of the internet and computerization together, because you could say twice in our lifetime because we're that old. But like the internet was the last time that something came along and everybody said, "Is it overhyped? Is it underhyped? Is it what's going on?" And in reality, it was game changing in terms of being able to affect everything that everybody in the organization did. It made everybody a little bit better every day if they were using it right. And it also unlocked huge new lines of business opportunities and customer experience opportunities. And that's what AI can do. And so the answer is, and that's with today's capability. That's not even where it's going in 12 to 18 months. So um, that's how I feel. I feel like there's, you're, I feel that Hughes did it. I thought Hugh did a great job of saying like, yeah, it's probably a 2x. The organization is going to become twice as good. Now, does that mean you're going to double your profits? No, it does not mean that. Remember he said, Hugh, on the interview just
Yeah.
now, he said, so I free up these 3 hours, but you times that times 200 people times 5 days a week. And all of a sudden I'm freeing up hundreds and hundreds of hours. Where am I redeploying those hours to
Yeah.
get lift? So it takes a minute, right, to work its way through. But
Yeah.
I,
And he wasn't clear yet. I mean, that was what was exciting him about the annual planning process. He wasn't clear yet how to use that time.
right, but I'd say, just to put a stake in the ground, I think that we could safely say that if an organization just goes all in and becomes an AI first organization, that they should see 50% productivity lift, period. That's an average. I'm saying it could be less, could be more. And I believe that should translate into 10% lift or 20% lift in operating profits within 12 months. I'm making a bold statement. It's a total generalization, but I kind of think that's where we're at right now,
I think that's
roughly.
right. Yeah. I mean,
Like
that gets to, we'll talk about this on another episode of one of our debriefs about the AI first index 100 in the public markets, and how we think
yeah,
that the companies that become AI first are really going to, within 12 months, will start to materially financially outperform their
yeah.
competitors. But we'll leave that for another
We should
day.
do a different podcast called like the AI 100, or you know. But that's and by the way, like I like your shirt. I can see why you said University of Washington earlier instead of Wharton, because you got that kind of, you're flying sort of the UW purple
Yeah,
there.
the purple. You like the purple.
I like the purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, Adam, if he had said, "Hey guys, what's your one piece of advice for me as I look at what I should be doing with AI next year?" What advice would you have for Hugh?
I'd probably say that he should make sure that he's he's thinking very tangibly about how to scale AI for next year, as opposed to, he's doing all this stuff, right? But my piece of advice to him, specifically someone who's already done the boot camp, workshop, council, etc., and he's gotten himself literate and proficient. Remember, he described it like he didn't understand certain parts of AI and now does, etc. At his point, and he's 90%, he's ahead of 90% of business.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But for someone in his position, I would say that he should, my advice to him would be, I'd be curious to get what you would say. Like, I would say, make sure you're being tangible at how you scale AI. So make sure that right now your council and your team, that they are actually building, like they're cataloging these opportunities. They're thinking about their roadmap. They're thinking about like, what are the things that they're really going to put in place that are tangible and can scale for the organization. And they don't just get stuck in we're doing it, it's kind of good, but no, we're not really like breaking out and getting any sort of real lift out of it. Like I would be worried for them, almost like a personal trainer, that they don't plateau at it. That would be my advice to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about. I mean, when we talk to some of our other clients, we'll probably have this conversation again. I mean, I would praise Hugh and his deployment with a real focus on the cultural components and scale. So I would say that he's done that really well. I would say the area that if he was asking for my advice, I think he himself has not invested sufficiently in understanding what these models are really capable of. And he's not thinking big enough, or like he's thinking way too small, in my opinion. He's thinking at scale and he's thinking about culture, but he's thinking too small strategically about the unlock that these could be for his customers and for his business. And that could be in any variety. Like there's a bigger bet I think he would be more comfortable making a bigger bets even ahead of where his teams are, because he's sort of thinking at a scale operational level, but not about the consumer or customer unlock or sales unlock that is available to them. Like there are major strategic things that they're just not pushing on, and because they're moving very slowly through a cultural and scale digital transformation.
No, it's funny you say that, because we can end on this point, which is that what you just said is what I was thinking when I said make sure he scales and sticks, and because you're right, like
Yeah, it's actually not
same
scale.
thing.
It's actually being strategic,
Yeah,
and thinking bigger.
thinking bigger. That's right.
Yeah. All right, with that was I mean, it was great. Thank you again, Hugh, if you're listening to this, for being on the show and for being a client, customer of Forum 3, and go Sounders, go Rain.